Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. A blue water economy, that's how Pakistani officials are describing the major oil and gas deposits found in the country's territorial waters. Some estimates put the discovery as the world's fourth largest reserves. Currently, the country imports over 80% of its oil needs. However, experts caution it could take several years and billions of dollars in investments to fully utilize the oil and gas deposits. Proposals for bidding and exploration are already under consideration. Let's take a look at this report.
Pakistan's territorial waters isn't just for shipping anymore. It's a gateway to untapped wealth. In what could be a game-changing development, Pakistan has discovered what could be one of the world's largest oil and gas reserves. This discovery comes at a crucial time as the country grapples with an economic crisis and skyrocketing living costs. Pakistan currently imports over 80% of its oil needs. Fuel rationing to its textile sector alone has resulted in a loss of $1 billion in the country's export orders. With electricity prices surging by 155% since 2021, the struggle to meet energy needs is not just an inconvenience, it's a matter of survival. However, experts caution that it will take several years and billions of dollars in investments to exploit these newly found resources fully. China appears to be the most likely partner to help Pakistan tap into these reserves, as Pakistani officials have praised their economic partnership with Beijing.
Our relations with People's Republic of China, a truly special and a time-tested relationship that not only serves as a testament to our all-weather strategic cooperative partnership, but also as a cornerstone for peace and stability, both for Pakistan and the region that is today fraught with challenges.
The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a flagship project under China's Belt and Road Initiative, has already seen tens of billions of dollars funded into Pakistan's massive transport, energy, and infrastructure projects since 2013. While China is the frontrunner, other countries might also show interest. However, security concerns and high costs are deterring major oil companies from rushing in. The discovery could also shift regional dynamics. If Pakistan successfully develops these reserves, it could become a key player in the global energy market, giving neighbors Iran and the Gulf more competition. And Pakistan's potential rise as an energy giant couldn't have come at a more crucial time. The fighting in Russia and Gaza has upended global energy markets. With Russian and oil gas companies sanctioned by the West and traditional energy sea lanes disrupted by Houthi attacks, countries have been forced to seek new sources. Pakistan's newfound reserves could help fill this critical gap. But could these discoveries spark competition among global powers to secure a stake in Pakistan's energy sector? And will the country's leaders be able to harness this potential wealth without falling into the oil curse?
To discuss the major oil and gas discovery in Pakistan, joining me now from Lahore is energy analyst Osama Rizvi, and from Islamabad, Hanan Hussain, a senior expert at Initiate Futures. Gentlemen, thanks for taking time out of your day to discuss this. Now, I want to start with Osama. People are calling this a game changer for Pakistan. Is it a game changer?
Well, that's a million-dollar question at the moment. In principle, and personally, I believe and I support indigenous oil and gas production because if we look at the whole spectrum of the economic crisis that Pakistan tends to face, at least from the past 3-4 years now, a major part of it, the majority of it, stems from the energy crisis. And Pakistan being an import-based economy, we are a victim to the vicissitudes of international energy prices. And given the current geopolitically charged environment, Pakistan cannot afford higher energy prices. And in that regard, in the longer term planning, Pakistan should be focusing on indigenous oil and gas production. That is one part. So in that regard, this is a good news. However, the second part, which is most important, is that whether we will be able to make use of this hydrocarbon reserves, and that too in a positive manner, and not fall victim to what is called the rentier economy. That remains a challenge. Another challenge is the investment costs, which is around $5 billion, and the time scale, which is about 5 to 7 years. And currently, instead of companies rushing, we are seeing companies moving out of Pakistan. Aramco being an exception, so that remains a challenge. And I think only time will be able to tell whether we make use of it or not.
Okay, thank you. Hanan, is this oil discovery a savior for the Pakistani economy?
I think it is. Yusuf, it is, because if you look at Pakistan's current economic standing, the multiple aspects to Pakistan's current economic crisis, energy plays a huge role. And I think this is quite a starting point when you look at the broader ambitions which this government looks to accomplish. I mean, you are talking about 240 tentative sites which the government wants to discover. How those materialize remains to be seen. But for this particular discovery, I think would lend some sort of confidence to where Pakistan wants to be over the next 2 years. Of course, I would lay the emphasis on a couple of fronts. For example, in terms of Pakistan's extraction capacities, there are certain shortcomings domestically, which is why I suspect Pakistan would have to leverage the expertise of its time-tested ally China. And we have seen a series of agreements that also materialized during this month. So I think in terms of the broader energy crisis and where Pakistan wants to be in the long run, I think this is a sigh of relief given the current circumstances.
Now, Osama, in your previous answer, you talked about investment and you talked about some big numbers. Where's that money going to come from? From Pakistan or from outside of Pakistan? What's your expectation?
Well, ideally, it should come from international companies, international investors. But as we all know, that Pakistan has been suffering some problems, some external shocks as well, which makes the country not a very sought-after destination in terms of investment. We have seen that as we observed slight falls in the FDI and remittances as well. Pakistan, once again, through the initiative of SIFC and others, intend to create more investment. For instance, there are about 235 trillion cubic feet of shale reserves. And according to an estimate, only an investment of $30 billion can yield a proceeding of about $160 billion. But these are all numbers, right? I do not believe that Pakistan's domestic or indigenous investment capacity stands at the point where we can fully and optimally utilize these reserves. International companies remain mandatory, but we have to create that enabling environment, what Clayton Christensen has called the pull factor in his book, The Prosperity Paradox. So I think that, I pray and I hope that we lead towards that. But at the moment, we have failed to create that pull factor. And there are many fronts on that end that remains unaddressed.
So, Hanan, now Osama's saying this money's expected to come from overseas. What are the major countries or companies that you see interested in investing in this major discovery?
I think the focus is largely going to be on Chinese companies because they have a history of, for example, adapting to Pakistan's energy needs and also being very specific about the kind of drilling and extraction capacities that Pakistan may need. And I think we do see proof points for that. We've seen that during this month as well. Chinese drilling companies entering into agreements with Pakistan and expressing an interest, even in the past, to kind of build on the refinery front as well and advance Pakistan's efforts. So I think that's a low-risk strategy for Pakistan. It's something where China has, a comfort zone in terms of, energy exploration as well. But I diverge on the fact that I don't see a whole lot of international companies at this point in time taking a bit of a gamble on Pakistan's energy crisis. I'll tell you why. Because for the many, I'd say 2 to 3 years, we've seen many of the bidding processes also take place. A lot of companies, efforts being made to engage them. Have they materialized to the extent that we're satisfied? I think Pakistan, we need to manage our expectations on that front. But in terms of China, I think in the near term, I see a lot of engagement happening on that front and prospective money coming in from that side as well, Pakistan.
Osama, what's the timetable on this project? I mean, when can the average Pakistani expect a drop in maybe energy prices or more budget revenue to be allocated to improving daily life? When can the Pakistani people feel the difference?
Well, Yusuf, not very soon, unfortunately. And as always, there are too many moving parts to this question as well. First of all, in terms of investment, as I shared before, it might require 5 to 7 years for the extraction processes. But we also need to learn first And to the best of my knowledge, I do not know that whether these reserves are probable reserves, possible reserves, whether they are feasible to be drilled at the current price. Also, we also need to look at our refining sector, which has quite a low utilization rates, and we have sort of this old hydro skimming technology that needs to improve. Furthermore, to answer the question that whether these benefits will trickle down to the common man, I would like to say that we are at a stage right now where we need to really implement fiscal discipline, at least in the shorter run. So even if the benefits are to trickle down, they need to be done so via subsidies for specific classes. We need to have a very good system in place, because if we proceed to give this gift to all, all in sundry in one go, that might mess up the national exchequer and the foreign reserves and other expenditures. And Pakistan at this stage cannot afford to do that. So yeah, 5 to 7 years, not really soon, but many moving parts still remain.
Hanan, Osama raised a good question. Will this money trickle down into the pockets of the average Pakistani? How would you want to see this revenue invested in the country's economy going forward?
I want it to be very targeted. For example, the focus has to be uncompromisingly on proven reserves. We've seen that distinction has to be made on a priority basis. And when those reserves are identified, of course, then you got to allow yourself a grace period of about 3 to 4 years so that we see the extraction take place. And obviously, Pakistan's domestic refining capacity has been under question by those very refineries even this month. So when you talk about that, I think that logistics front has to be kind of hammered out a bit more clearly so we know which proven reserves are being prioritized. In terms of how I want to see it, I think in Pakistan's many of the ups and downs that have been happening have been based on industrial demand. So, for example, when we talk about Pakistan even kind of trying to renegotiate its natural gas imports from Qatar, that was not based on the consumers in the industrial front had their reservations. So I think before it comes down to the people, I think the government would have to kind of streamline its processes with regard to the industries and make sure that those shocks do not disturb potential utility for the people in the future.
From Lahore, Osama Rizvi. From Islamabad, Hanan Hussain. Thanks for joining me to discuss Pakistan's major oil and gas discovery.